MotorWeek is made possible by Tire Rack. Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, John Davis.
And welcome, everyone, to MotorWeek podcast number 130. Welcome around our table. And we're upstairs in our Sound Studio A today. A little bit different venue for us, but we still have our writer-producer, Brian Robinson.
Hello, John.
Our assistant producer, Greg Carlos.
All right.
Our writer extraordinaire, Patrick Lucas.
Welcome back, everybody.
And we have a lightning round, a viewer question, our Rant and Rave section. But first, this is a special show because this is our recap of the 2015 LA Auto Show, and we're also going to touch on the new Toyota Prius. But let's start off with the auto show. And full disclosure here, both Greg and I are fresh back from the LA Auto Show.
Quite literally.
And you got back just this morning.
Well, yep.
Patrick's in the process of pulling all the material together. I know Brian Robinson keeps up with what's new there. So I'll start with you, Greg. Most influential, most interesting, best vehicles at the show. Where would you start?
Probably the reveal that I first started at was actually the Fiat, the 124 Spider.
Yeah.
Which is cool, yeah.
Yeah, and I really think, it's kind of the star of the show, even though we all knew it was coming, and we all know it's based on a Miata, but still.
Well, that was one of the few that we were really, really looking forward to. I mean, that was a world debut, right?
It was indeed.
Yeah, so that was actually a really big deal. Among a bunch of others we had been talking about earlier, wasn't a lot of world debuts there, a lot of North American debuts.
There were a lot of refacing and, relaunches and freshenings. But, I'm the only one in the room that kind of grew up with the original Spider in the 60s. And this is the 50th anniversary of it. And it's interesting because, here's this sports car that is based on a Miata. They've got all different body panels and certainly a different front end. The interior is pretty much the same, but they do have their own powertrain. They got a Fiat powertrain. And so I expect it'll be interesting. I'm sure we'll all be driving them back to back. But I don't know. As much as I was excited about it, and I like the looks of it, is it the fact that it's just the proportions are so much like a Miata? And there's something wrong.
How much time did you spend with it actually in person? Because I'll say this. I saw it revealed, and I thought, okay, that looks pretty good. I wouldn't say it looks great. And then as I'm walking around the show, I'm following along on Twitter, and I'm seeing pictures of it. And I'm like, that doesn't look as good as I remember. But then I went back to it.
It
looks better in person.
It looks better in person. All of the early photographs that Chrysler sent out were all black, of a black model, which I thought was terrible. They've got like this medium blue that's going to be their launch color. It has the Ferrari-ish old 60 style headlight flares, which works. The grill's a little weird. It's like I'm not sure what it is because it's not like the original grill.
I thought it was a little strange there because the Miata seemed like it was like a tight package with like the squinty lights and like everything looked sharp and aggressive. And this, with the typical Fiat, like you said, the headlights on the grill bulging and big and like in your face. And I guess because we saw the Miata first, the MX-5, that worked so much better in my head that this, I've only seen pictures, so I guess we're going to have to wait.
Yeah, it's a cool-looking car. I bet it probably handles a skosh better, although the suspension's going to, basically be the same. So we'll see. I'm a little disappointed they didn't have enough money to kind of do a little bit different dashboard because, the interior, the instrument panel is almost exactly the same. So, and to go all that effort and still say, oh, it's a Miata. Well,
yeah, it's like getting in the Scion IA.
Yeah.
After seeing all of it, and then you get inside and it's a Mazda.
It's like, okay, well, you know where they save money at. But I think that was an important vehicle.
So it's not as good looking as the Miata. The powertrain is going to be Italian.
Here we come, guys.
This is not I'm just saying. Why are we
Yeah.
buying this over an MX-5?
I think that's a very good question. And actually, Fiat stood up there and said, we don't expect this to be a big volume vehicle.
Are they going after people who have owned older
Well,
Spiders,
except that they're my age. I suppose they could be. let's face it, it will be no matter what happens, it will be far more reliable than the original 124 Spider.
I would sure hope so.
I think it'll be more
vehicle.
appealing because they're doing the Abarth version, which
will be probably a kick-ass car.
Right, which will have a lot more performance. Yeah. So that should get people excited.
The two probably most significant, at least from a domestic manufacturer, intros there were over at GM. Cadillac showed its SRX replacement. It's called the XT5, midsize SUV or crossover, whatever you want to call it. And right across the lane from it was the new Buick LaCrosse, which is the first one to kind of embrace the Avignard concept styling. I will give you my 2 cents. I couldn't believe both these vehicles came out of the same company. I think the LaCrosse is absolutely gorgeous. It's one of the most attractive four-door sedans I've ever seen. Just like the Avignard Concept. The interior is beautiful. They've got real wood in it. And then I go over to Cadillac, and here's this thing that I can best describe as looking sort of like a lettuce wedge salad.
That's
I mean,
so funny. I want to go back and look at these
It-
pictures now and just see what you're talking about.
It's like they took an Escalade and instead of taking the great styling of the ATS and bringing it up, they sort of took the Escalade and tried to come down. I just don't think it's really attractive. And they're after that BMW Mercedes buyer. And the interior, where everybody else is getting away from these haptic touch sliders. I mean, Lincoln was running away from it so fast you could see smoke coming out of the back.
Yeah, Ben had recently said something about the Explorer that we had recently. That's all back to regular
all
buttons
back to
now.
regular buttons, and here Cadillac seems to be going the other way. So I don't know. It's comfortable in the back seat. I had no problems getting in back there. It's got a big, of course, full length sun's panoramic roof. But it left me kind of cold just because of the LaCrosse I thought was pretty cool.
I'd love to talk about the LaCrosse, but I think they're the XT5, whatever.
XT5.
Right, XT5. I think they probably didn't feel as urgent a need to do a lot other than rename it because it's their best seller and probably still will be.
What do you mean? It's all different.
I know it's all different, but I'm just saying it's not as advanced as...
Well, but the SRX, everybody kept saying it's not really up to speed. It can't really be competitive, and this is supposed to be like a home run vehicle for them, a very important vehicle. So, I will say that I think I'm being unusually negative. Most of the press has been kind to it, so we'll see. Running down the list, other things that were important. There was a couple car vehicles I think that will get overlooked that shouldn't be. New Sentra. It basically got a pretty thorough rework. I don't think it's all completely new.
Much more Maxima.
The Elantra, on the other hand, from Hyundai is all new. And it's followed the little bit more mature styling that they've been dishing out of late. But it's got some class-leading first in it. It's the first in its class to have full auto stop with pedestrian
must have missed
detection.
that one.
Yeah, and it's a nice-looking car. And now the interior is big enough to be a mid-size car. So I thought that was worth it.
I was very happy with what they did with the Elantra. Much more up to snuff with the rest of the the Hyundais. We've seen some new powertrains, I believe, like a 1.4 turbo, which will be with a
which is
dual
like
clutch.
a 35 mile per gallon city highway combined vehicle.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a pretty popular powertrain in that car. I think it'll do well. Now, I'll say this. I'm not a huge fan of that dual clutch transmission. I've noticed it's had some problems in other vehicles we've used it in, but who knows? Maybe they'll smooth it out, and I think that should be a pretty good one for them.
I like what Mercedes did with the SL. I think it's a much better looking vehicle now.
Yeah.
Looks a lot more like the GTS. We saw the production version of the Infiniti QX30, their small, compact SUV. But I look at it, and as much as I like it, I mean, we've seen it now for 3 auto shows. As much as I like it, I don't understand why you'd buy that over a Murano, which I know is a little bit bigger, but they look very similar.
Yeah.
So... the Range Rover Evoque convertible,
we already covered that.
There was some people like
probably the craziest vehicle at the show.
You
but-
walk by and there's people just kind of looking at it with their heads cocked to the side, just like,
Alpha. You want to talk about the Alpha?
talking about it a
The
little
U.S.
bit.
debut.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to it a little bit later. But yeah, it's the and Patrick, you'll have to kind of remind me. I have trouble saying it. It's Julia.
Julia.
Brian Robinson
right?
is the expert.
Julia. And
Julia.
Slightly
it's a very historic
This is
name.
like this is the second time I've seen it because I was at Frankfurt. So it's still a very good looking car, and it's. I mean, everything I'm seeing about it, it should be very competitive.
They claim lowest 0 to 60 time of any four-door mass production four-door sedan, 3.7. The highest power to weight ratio out there. So we'll see. I mean, it's maybe a tenth off of the ATS-V, I guess. A tenth better, but we'll see. It's pretty close.
I ask, am I the only one who sees BMW 3 Series or maybe like a smaller 3 Series from like the A-pillar back of that entire vehicle?
Yeah,
well, that's clearly what they're going for.
Yeah.
Right?
But it literally looks like
yeah.
they went into a BMW dealership.
And chop the front off.
Yeah.
Chop the back off.
Yeah.
Could be. CX-9 from Mazda, all new finally. We have a long-term CX-9. It's a very sturdy vehicle, but it's probably about 3 or 4 years past when it should be redone. They really didn't give a whole lot of information. There's more information about it coming out next week. It looks very attractive. It looks like it's still, it's got their Kodo, was it Kodo design language?
Soul of Motion.
And Soul of Motion.
Did you hear I was reading up on it. I have to. It's my job.
It's four-cylinder.
Only four-cylinder.
Only do four-cylinder.
Because they said that people who buy the car don't care about.
Yeah, right. You ever been on the interstate with one?
That's Volvo's line too.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes.
So it's a 2.5 turbo, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, and they're saying it's got good numbers. We'll see, but that's a big vehicle to be moving around with a four-cylinder turbo.
We skipped over. We were talking about American cars earlier. The MKZ had a update.
Yeah. The MKZ, which was a nice-looking car except for the split-ring grille, which was sort of like starting to get passable. And they've taken the Continental Concept grille and put on it, which looked okay on the Continental, kind of, Bentley-like. I don't think it looks like anything.
Yeah, it just blends in. That's probably the best way to describe it. And that's maybe the new face of Lincoln, indistinguishable. Yeah, that was.
But it's not a Ford anymore.
They caught so much flack over the grill. I think they just thought they maybe were thinking, let's just get away from that. Let's cut our losses and just make something that looks more in line with everything else.
The one thing they did do on the interior, did you notice? Almost everything's back to buttons and knobs.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty amazing.
Is it all new, the MKZ? I mean, it seems like every
no,
other
it's
year
not.
there's like an all-new MKZ.
It's refreshed.
New powertrain.
But it's new powertrain.
They have the first shot at, I'm assuming it's a Ford-built engine that they're going to use in Fords, but the twin-turbo V6, it's like
3-liter.
400 horsepower or something like that. So, I mean, that's powerhouse.
We actually, we were told by Lincoln, they claim it's a new engine, that it's not like a 3.5 taken down, but I wonder if that's true. So, LA Auto Show, a good solid start to the auto show season. Like most LA shows, lots of practicality with a little bit of Hollywood flash. Green Car of the Year, Chevy Volt. And I think probably
I called that one.
Yeah. I think they took the path of least resistance.
Yeah, that was probably why I called it. It was a very easy job.
Although you could argue that maybe they should have, it was really, of the 5 candidates, they had that and the Prius, so that was probably a tough call. Yeah. Which gets us into the Prius.
Transition. Nice transition.
Greg, you have you just came back from driving the new Toyota Prius. Give us your impressions.
It is certainly a better Prius. It is more efficient. It is they actually started it's a new architecture for the entire brand now. They call it Toyota new global architecture.
So this is like the Volkswagen.
That's creative.
MK.
Right. So it's just going to
to
start trickling into all the other Toyotas. Here you get a fully independent rear suspension now on the Prius
That's
double
a big
wishbone,
change.
which we've seen the Highlander did it a couple years ago. Horsepower I think is down to 121, but then efficiency goes up, and they also offer an eco version, which they say there's no official numbers out yet. They say that the eco version will get 58 miles per gallon city, 56 combined, 56 combined, 58 city, and that actually gets the lithium ion battery, which pretty much all Priuses will get. The nickel metal hydride is only in the Prius 2 non-eco.
Like the absolute base model.
Yeah.
The base model.
Right. But I got to say, driving it around, it is more comfortable. It's quieter.
Better seats finally.
Better seats, yeah, absolutely. We actually did a little handling course on an airstrip. Not exactly the vehicle I wanted to be in my first time on an open airstrip, but handles better, but it's not. I will say that I don't think it even is as good as the Volt, really, with handling.
Am I the only person that thinks that these two cars have crossed? I look at the new Prius and say, less wedgy. It's got a defined hood now. It looks more like the Volt. And the Volt, on the other hand, if you look at it, it looks more like a Prius. Is that just me?
It's conspiracy.
Well, but overall, you think big improvement.
Yeah, definitely an improvement. There's a ton of new safety on it too. I mean, there's adaptive cruise control, which will actually bring you to a stop. It's kind of like Mercedes is what is theirs? Distronic Plus, where you can actually use it in traffic. It'll bring you to a stop. And then they also have collision avoidance, which they're very careful to say that it'll bring you to a stop. I did get them to say that between, I think, under 25 or so.
Well, it
is capable of bringing you to a stop. But they will not say that, yes, this will stop you every time.
Because they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't make that claim on the latest Camry either.
Yeah,
but they sounds like they got a little bit closer.
But we got to test that out, and it did. It stopped itself.
How's the interior looking? They're still in that funky little shifter.
Yep, they have they moved the shifter a little bit. It's more in the center now. The gauge is still centered up top, but there's also it's reconfigured and there's more color, so it's easier to see things. If you just glance down, it's just easier to see it.
Well, they didn't streamline it like the rest of Toyotas. It's still like uniquely Prius.
Yeah, but there is hints of Toyota, or like the rest of the Toyota lineup in it. So they did kind of bring that in there to make it feel a little bit less Prius, but at the same time, it's still very Prius.
Did it feel less powerful? Could you notice like?
I wouldn't. Nah, I didn't. It was pretty negligible. You don't really. I hardly found myself really trying to get on it, and when I needed to, it was enough. But I wouldn't say I noticed any real loss in power.
Before we move on, actually one more vehicle we didn't mention at the LA Auto Show. The third time we've seen the Toyota CHR Concept, now officially a Scion. So Scion's first quote unquote SUV crossover, due in about a year. Anybody see it? Do you think much of it? I mean, it's kind of cool looking, but who knows what the production model looks like.
We've all pretty much seen it a couple times.
So it's worth noting that they finally acknowledged that Scion is going to go into the
way to go,
the crossover arena.
That'll be good for them.
And let's go back to the Alfa and do that for our lightning round. And we do actually have a bell today. It is an electronic bell.
Greg, I think you'll be handling this one.
There we go.
Right.
All right, we have 2 minutes to talk about it. Speaking of LA, the Alfa Romeo Giulia, and we saw it in person. You've seen it twice, I guess. So it seems is FCA taking another serious step towards relaunching their high-end Italian brand. And based on what we've seen with the Giulia, and we know there's a forthcoming Roadster that isn't going to be based on the Miata, supposedly. At least it'll be built in Italy. Is there room for them among the BMWs and the Audis and the Mercedes and the Cadillacs? And what do you think? Got a chance this time or what?
Well, I was kind of surprised. Wasn't there rumors like a week or two ago that they was being pushed back already? There was always talk
I think there was something in the press about the launch being delayed another 6 months.
That car, their plans in the U.S. entirely.
All of the above.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I think the whole thing's supposed to be 6 months later than they originally
Was there a
planned.
specific reason or just rumors that something?
I think they were like restructuring how they were going to go to the U.S. market or whatever. Or they were rethinking all that stuff. So I don't know. It makes me wonder if we're ever going to see this car.
That's a scary thought. It makes me sad.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks to be pretty. If everything they say is true, it should be a real contender with with 3
Well,
Series.
they're certainly coming out with guns blazing about making claims. I mean, they're sitting there saying, fastest production 4-door you can buy, 0 to 60, 3.7 seconds, which granted is a tenth here or there better than some, quicker than others, but that's going to depend on who's testing it on what day.
All we've seen though is the Quadrifoglio, the ultra high performance
Right.
version. So
And that's
which
not
is
what
the equivalent.
most people
well,
will
that's
buy.
the deal. I mean, BMW makes the sizzle with the M4 and the M3, but they sell enough 3 Series to make it all profitable. We haven't even seen a regular Giulia yet.
Well, they
And do you
announced-
think enough people are going to buy that to make it worth their while?
We know what the powertrain's going to be. It's a 276 horsepower 2-liter i4
Correct,
turbo.
but I mean, the Quadrifoglio, I have no problem. I'm down with it, and I'm sure people are going to buy it. But how many people are going to buy a regular Giulia? I think that's the more important question.
Well, I mean, are they trying to get? Is their strategy? I mean, have they made it clear that they're just trying to impress us, the journalists, first with that? I mean, it seems like not such a bad idea to get us in a frenzy over
I
it.
think that's a pretty apt way to look at it. So
Yeah.
they'll get all the press with a high-end car.
Yeah.
I mean, it's certainly. I think the 3 Series could use all the competition it can get right now. I mean, that thing's gotten kind of stagnant, in my opinion. So, yeah, I mean, if they can really put together something that lives up to, or even gets close to living up to the hype, I think.
Has it got a chance of becoming an aspirational car for, 30-somethings?
I think the Quadrifoglio definitely has that sort of like you work up to that level, and I guess FCA could probably float them in the meantime.
Yeah.
With it, I don't know.
Is that unique brand gonna be? I mean, a big. I don't know. I'm losing.
Stop talking.
Yeah, I think enough. Well, good luck, Alpha. We certainly like what we've seen. We just can't wait to drive it. All right, let's talk about a viewer question. Michael has one for us. Every few weeks, I connect my Garmin GPS to my computer for updates.
Wow,
really?
that is-
I don't know anybody that
that's
does
hard
that, Michael.
diligence.
That
Yeah.
is diligence.
I'm going to call him
Travel
next
out
time.
of your
Direction.
comfort zone. My gosh.
Also, my iPad and Windows computers get updates on a regular basis at no cost. It occurs to me that I have no idea how a modern automobile gets updates for its computers or GPS. Can an owner do any of these updates? What about cost? That's a darn good question, and my understanding is that some cars you can update their computers and their GPS, automatically, but most all of them you still have to take them to the dealer, and the GPS costs money.
My understanding, I went to a Ford event this summer, and they were previewing Sync 3. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's not Ford, maybe it's not Sync 3. I'm totally misremembering this. but
Well,
some,
go ahead and
think
give
I
us
was
your
there.
opinion anyway.
some company has the car can connect to Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's Sync 3. And it can connect to Wi-Fi like if you're parked in your garage. And it can download updates.
I think Sync 3 can, and I think at least one of the European manufacturers.
I think
is
we're
doing
heading that way. I think traditionally you had to go to the dealer and pay to get an
Right.
update, or you got like one free update and then you had to pay. But I think more and more we're moving along the lines of like cell phone.
Right, and it's even
smartphone,
sort of
like-
more of like a passive thing where it's just like you're parked at your house and like you allow the car access to your Wi-Fi network and, every couple months or so if it needs an update.
So, Michael, I hope that helps. But I want to go one step further. Once we get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto on all these new cars, is anybody going to care about any of the system that comes with the cars anymore?
When I was at that Ford event, I asked them, I said, you guys are like prepping so hard for this Sync 3 and you spent all this time and like resources developing Sync 3. I was like, what happens, because you guys are also supporting Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, what was all the effort for? And they said they think that enough people will not use those two systems and use Sync 3 by itself.
Every place I go, everybody's using their cell phones and the nav systems on their cell phones.
From experience, when I did that Camaro trip, I had Apple CarPlay, and when I was using the navigation, I ended up using Chevy's navigation.
Really?
Because I don't like Apple Maps, and you can't get like the readout
can't
for
do
Google Maps.
Google,
Right.
yeah.
Now, if you're Android, then you have the Google
That's
Maps.
a good point.
So-
that's a good point. We'll see. Rant and Rave. Anybody got something on their minds that they want to spill out in the
I
public?
mean, I do, but does
Well,
anybody
I've
Go
always
ahead.
got something locked and loaded.
All right, well, it was raining yesterday. We can probably do two because this will be a short
Okay.
one. It was raining yesterday, and I noticed I was in the Tahoe, brand new Tahoe, rear windshield wiper. Of course, it has one. I was following a Focus hatchback, probably last gen, has a rear windshield wiper. Why don't all cars have them?
You mean like sedans?
Yeah. Why don't they have a rear windshield
I don't
wiper?
know.
I can't remember a time where I've actually needed one.
Really?
Why did you need a rear wiper?
Because it was just enough. It wasn't like pouring down rain, but there was just enough mist and stuff kicking up around that I could
Well,
barely see.
that's
up
what
there.
I use
Even
mine
on a
for. is the
hatchback or anything, you don't ever use the rear wiper?
Because I do because the
crazy.
way a vehicle goes through the air, if you've got
Right, it kinda
either
kicks up
a
on it.
fastback or a straight up and down like an SUV, you tend to just get it dirty
That too.
and you
yeah.
can't see
Yep.
it. But I have to admit, I haven't had that much problems with the sedan.
No, I couldn't.
I don't know.
All right.
It,
Well, then there
it
you
is,
go.
it is a noticeable difference between a hatch and a sedan.
I know
You don't
the
have
airflow is
problem
very
with-
different.
Yeah.
All right, well,
I think there is a certain
That's
reason. They've been
interesting.
doing it for years.
Then let's move on. There we go.
Well,
That was
no,
my
I
short
mean, I
little
think that's
rant.
kind of interesting.
Thanks
but-
for that, Patrick.
Should be required on all vehicles now that I think about
Well,
it.
gosh knows if you say it loud enough, I'm sure the government will make it so.
It's a
All right,
safety,
Greg.
it's a safety issue.
Well, yeah,
people.
while we're still on the auto show topic, this is something we can all relate to. John, you and I, just because we just came back, I'm getting a little tired of when they do the actual unveiling of the car.
Yeah.
I'm talking the pulling of the sheet.
Yeah.
So from the time that they stop talking to they actually unveil the car, sometimes, and it's not everybody, but sometimes it's just way too long. And it's for a car I've already seen. It's just like I'm sitting there with
Well, they
the
have
camera.
to give you all of their sales information.
Well, no, I'm not even worried about that. I'm talking about the actual time between when they're done giving all
Right.
the sales information and the time the girls or whatever pull the.
You
sheet
sound
off
like
of it.
such an entitled journalist. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I do understand that. I know it's not everybody
think
has
people
this
would kill to
problem,
be
but
at an auto show?
this is fresh on my mind.
Well, what gets me is when they give you all the hype and build up for the vehicle. They've run through the sales stuff. They've told you how wonderful everything is. And then they pull the wraps off the vehicle and they give you absolutely no information.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I understand it's all on the internet and they've given it to you on a thumb drive and all that.
But technically,
wouldn't
we've
you
also
rather
seen it,
sit there and
probably.
hear about the vehicle than how many sales they've had for the last 9 months?
Yeah, I agree with that as well.
Anyway,
So-
but then again, we're not spending millions of dollars unveiling a vehicle at an auto show.
Patrick
are
just
we?
made me feel bad about myself now, so I'm gonna be much more
Keep it
humble.
real. Keep it real.
And we're going to keep it real and wrap up this edition of our MotorWeek podcast, number 130. I want to thank everybody for their participation. Our writer-producer, Brian Robinson. Assistant producer, Greg Carlos, who still has some jet lag. Our writer, Patrick Lucas. Our audio engineer for
Johnny,
today.
John.
Whoa, what did you do?
You lost your head.
Oh, I lost my head.
Oh, my goodness.
That is-
David
head fell
Wainwright.
off.
David Wainwright
That
is
is
our
not a
audio
good
engineer
omen.
today. Our podcast creator, Bob Mixter, and our producer, Patrick Lucas, even though he forgot to bring the mechanical bell in today. So
boy.
Greg
Ding, ding, ding.
substituted.
I'm not
with
doing it
one.
because digital is just.
Thank you
need
very
analog.
much for listening
So
to our
sorry, John.
podcast and for watching Motor Week on all the public television stations around the country,
Dude,
and also for following us on the Velocity Cable channel. I'm John Davis. For all of us at Motor Week, thanks very much for being a part of Motor Week, television's original automotive magazine.
You have been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at motorweek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series each week on your local PBS station.